the public on online harms, thereby preventing the harms before they happen, but also empowering them on what to do in the event of being victims of such. And we also do have victim support. But the CEO will go through the details, and the rest of myself, as well as the other executives, will be here to take the questions and answers. Over to you, Acting CEO.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members, Deputy Minister, DG, and colleagues. I will share my screen. If that can I just get confirmation that it's visible?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. It's on presentation mode. Thank you. And thank you so much for the opportunity for us to make a presentation. So this is how the outline for the presentation, and we'll try to just stick to the core concepts. The presentation has been shared, but if there's anything else, we are, like Chair has said, we are here to clarify any other of the matters. We thought we could just share the high level in terms of where we come from as the FPB, just to give that historical context from censorship board back in the days to where we are now, where we are a more transformed organization, which really not necessarily censor as this was the case in the past, to work with stakeholders and ensuring that there's protection, especially at the core of it, protection of children and the vulnerable against prohibited content. So it's more of a transformation that then came in within the 1996 with the Film and Publications Act from the previous act, which then governed us, to now, as DG has said, the latest iteration of the act, which then came into amendment, or came into law in 2019, but took effect in 2022 after the proclamation by the president. So this is what guides the operations of the FPB. This is what guides us on how then do we monitor and regulate the content space. Then what then guides us? What are the key themes, or what are the key items then guide us? We exist to protect the public, and like I've said, specifically and most importantly, protecting children and the vulnerable groups against what is defined in our act as harmful and prohibited content. And these are the definitions of what constitutes harmful content and what constitutes prohibited content, in line with what the act says. So this is really the framework which then guides how the FPB operates and how the FPB then regulates the industry. The legislative prohibitions, we thought let's just put them here so that it is clear to honorable members that what then are the prohibitions and provisions that are there in our act. For example, 24A, which specifically says the possessions of films, games, and publications and without being submitted to the FPB for classification. So there's a prohibition there. There's fines that are then linked to that. If any distributor possesses or distribute films without those films being, and games and certain publications not being submitted to FPB for classification, they are in contravention of 24A. And then section 24G specifically, and I want to go through them because really these are the key ones that then guides us. Production, possession, distribution of content. This is now what is now is prohibited content, advocacy of hatred based on identifiable groups, imminent violence, or any excitement of war which then causes harm. So these are then prohibited content in line with 24G. And then in line with 18E, this empowers then the public to lodge complaints with the FPB for any unclassified prohibited content or potential prohibited content that they are picking up on the social media or on their platforms. And then FPB can then investigate such complaints. And then if then there's merits to that, enforcement actions can then be taken by the distributor or whoever posted or whoever distributed such content online. 18F then is on the distribution on social media or any other platforms of private sexual images or films of persons without their consent. This is what is known as non-consensual sharing of intimate images. And now with the new technologies, the deepfakes, where there's AI generated either nude images or nude videos that the person who's being depicted in such images or videos did not give consent to. And technology and AI is really making this a little bit difficult, because it becomes difficult to sort of to determine which is the real image, which is a fake image. But 18F deals specifically with the non-consensual sharing of images or videos, which is in common terms is referred to as revenge pornography. And then 18G, which is very critical, and this is very, very important and close to, I think, a lot of people's hearts, is on the filming and the distribution of films or images depicting sexual abuse or sexual violence against children. This is one of the critical ones that I think it sits at the core of the mandate of the FPB, ensuring that those who are found guilty of possession, distribution, or even the production, the making of such material where children are being abused sexually, or children are being sort of assaulted, or there's violence, because this specifically also talks about not just the sexual abuse, but also the violence perpetrated against children and the distribution of such images. So these are the provisions in terms of what the Act says, it's sort of prohibited. Then enforcement mechanisms, and as the new Amendment Act at least gave the FPB teeth, where it says, you can establish the enforcement committee, and we have established that. The enforcement committee is chaired by a retired judge, is Judge Masipa, who then chairs the enforcement committee. This is to take any matters, either the complaints or non-compliance matters can then be taken to the enforcement committee for them to adjudicate on those matters and ensure that actions and enforcement action can then be taken through. Over and above that, one of our mechanisms is the appeal tribunal. So the appeal tribunal is in case a distributor or member of the public is not happy with the classification decisions that have been given to a specific film or a specific game, then they can lodge those complaints, or they can then put the case in front of the appeals tribunal, which can then adjudicate whether there was fairness or whether the age rating and the consumer advice given to such a feature is indeed in line with the classification guidelines. And then obviously in partnership with the law enforcement agencies, which is a lot of work that we have been doing, specifically in relation to cases around child sexual abuse, working very closely with law enforcement agencies in criminal prosecution of those cases found guilty or in offense of the sort of in contravention of the Film and Publications Act, in line with other acts as well. And then we can then have the powers to, our compliance officers have the powers to issue non-compliant distributors with compliance notices. We can then issue internet service providers, working closely with internet service providers, issue social media platforms with takedown notices. So if there's any content that is in contravention with our act, it can then be taken down, and we then have the powers in line with the Film and Publications Act, and in partnership with the Electronic Communication Act, we can then issue those takedown notices. And then in cases where there's non-compliance by a registered distributor with the FPB, we can then revoke their registration or revoke their permit for them to stop distributing sort of until they are then in line with our regulations. And then we can also then issue fines in line with the enforcement committee. And the act is very clear on the penalties and the fines that can then be issued. So moving now to the online platforms, because honorable members, the act, when it was amended in 2019, it was anticipating that content has now moved from cinemas, where there's a brick and mortar. Content is now moved into the online space, into the online platforms, where people are no longer going or at least not in as many of us going to the movie houses, but we can consume content in terms of games, films, any other content. We can consume it in the comfort of our homes, and this is with the advent of the online platforms. The next slide is just on high level, and I'm not going to spend time here on popular social media platforms, and we want to differentiate between the two. So this is on the social media platforms and the popular ones that are in South Africa, and I guess around most of the countries around the world. But then another then is then the video on demand streaming platforms, which then these ones are sort of where the FPB and sort of the focus is on. Not necessarily that we are not looking at the social media platforms. The Act still gives us powers on the social media platforms, but the sort of just the distinction between social media platforms and the video on demand streaming platforms, which most of us then use them to consume content, films, series, and all of those. Netflix, Showmax, and a whole lot of other ones that consumers can then subscribe to, and then they can then consume that content going forward. I thought, honorable members, I should just, give the distinction between social media platforms, which is more on user-generated content. So it's an individual, myself, posting images there, and then sharing with those that are following me. Whereas with the video on demand streaming platforms, it's now a subscription-based. It's more on productions moving that sort of for commercial purposes. There's a proper production that took place. There's a full-on commercialization of those films. That's why then sort of the difference between content on social media, which is driven by user-generated content, vis-a-vis full-on production films from production sort of houses. So which online harms then are we seeing, Honorable Chair, is that we have a dedicated team within FPB of online platform monitors working very closely with compliance officers, child protection officers within the organization, which then on a daily basis monitors for online harms, especially as we're saying the online space is not just for sort of distributing or just for posting, but there's consumption of content as well. We're looking out in line with the Act for prohibited content or harmful content such as child sexual abuse material, child violence, or any violence perpetrated against children and the vulnerable groups, revenge porn, like I've said, non-sharing of private sexual images, deep fakes, for example. With the advent of AI and technology, it really becomes difficult to know which one is real, which one is not real. But these are some of the things that we are on the lookout for. And then obviously in line with the sort of prohibitions, incitement of violence, propaganda against all, and the hate speech, again, in terms of extreme violence, because you will find that in most cases, especially with user-generated content, there will be extreme violence, which if that content would have been submitted to FPB for classification, it would have received a specific rating, meaning that it's not accessible by children, or at least there'll be a warning. But within the social media space, you will find that there's no warning of whether this is a graphical content coming in or not. And then people who are not even supposed to see it, especially children, then see it. And then just this slide is just to give in terms of specifically on child sexual abuse material cases that we have dealt with. And these are the cases that we work very closely with the SAPS and our child protection officers assisting in various courts, giving evidence on those cases that they have actually analyzed. So this is the material that then gets confiscated from the suspects, and then FPB child protection officers, which are trained social workers, trained content analysts who know exactly what they need to look out for this kind of images. Then they analyze these draft reports and then share that with the prosecution, and then give expert evidence within the courts. So these are the cases that we've worked on, at least beginning of this financial year, and there are those that are still ongoing within the courts. And I must say, in all the cases that we have been working with the SAPOs, all of those cases have ended with conviction, because I think the courts have also sent a strong message that, we are not going to tolerate any child sexual abuse material online, and those that are found in contravention of this, there's a strong message that is being sent. I think the last year's case with Mr. Ackerman in the Florida case, where he was meted with multiple life sentences, I think that's a strong case. There are a couple of them that the team is also working with the SAPS and the prosecution on currently. And then in terms of then the public complaints coming through, since April, there's been a couple of them as well. And this is just, these are some of the provisions that came in with the Amendment Act. So previously, before 2022, there was not this proactive, and we are seeing the amendment as being progressive in ensuring that the public can then complain with the sort of the FPB when they're picking up some of these prohibited contents. And these are some of the complaints that we have managed to handle and have managed to investigate and sort of resolve. But we also play a huge role when we go out to the communities, when we go out to the public, informing the public on their rights, and how then do they have to make lodge complaints with us, which various channels are there. We're still seeing a low number, but I think with our outreach and advocacy programs, partnering with stakeholders within the industry and the communities, we will start seeing the numbers going up. And then this slide is then on the compliance and enforcement action that we have then taken in terms of our inspections on physical platforms, inspections also on online platforms, compliance notices that we've issued, takedown notices that we've. So essentially then this is what actions have we then taken when we are either there's a complaint or we are proactively looking out for prohibited and harmful content online, but still not forgetting that there's a physical stores that are still distributing DVDs, that are still distributing illegal, especially as it relates to raids and confiscation of illegal material. Honorable Chair and members, you at some of the taxi ranks within the CBD, you'll still see hawkers and vendors who are then selling this DVD materials, which in our case we're taking a strong stand against this, because you'll find that, and this is an example, you'll find that the DVD sticker says this is CoComelon or this is the kids program, but only when the kids who are commuting from school and going home, they buy such material or that DVD for, to a value of 20 rands or 30 rands. Only when they get home, they want to watch such material. It's hardcore pornography. So our raids and the confiscations deal with such illegal material, because that material hasn't been classified by FPB, but it is being sold in our street. So we work very closely with other, regulators, law enforcement agencies, assist us when it comes to those raids within the, identified places. Then over and above the enforcement actions, because there are two sides. There's a stick where we're enforcing, and then we are then putting out enforcement actions. But there's also the carrot on the side, where we then educate the public on online safety and making sure that the public is aware of their rights, how to behave online, how to look out for prohibited and harmful content, and how to lodge complaints with us. So these are the number of online safety education and awareness workshops that we have had with various stakeholders, because we really want to go as broad as possible. We spend most of our time at schools, because we realize that we need to start working with Department of Basic Education and all the other stakeholders, ensuring that learners, or at least children at a young age, are taught on online safety, how then to protect themselves, because they become the vulnerable groups within the online space. There are predators who are looking to sell their images, to sell their videos online for a fee. So we really give them a message that please protect yourselves, and please stop being a bully. How then do you behave online? But also teach us as well that this needs to be in the classrooms, and this is where our partnership with DBE comes in very handy. So these are just various workshops and the number of them against different stakeholders for the different quotas. I think in the next 3 slides is the quotas for the year. And for us, this is again one of the key mandates that the FPB plays, especially in ensuring that there's a proactive action, because it is one thing saying you'll mete out enforcement actions, but media and digital literacy is one of the most important factors. When people are aware of what is it that they are getting themselves into, parents are aware when they're giving their children cell phones, digital devices, that they can then start communicating with strangers across the country. There's an analogy that I like to use that to parents when we go to schools and teachers, that if a stranger were to knock in front of the house and say, "I'm here to meet your 7-year-old child in the bedroom," no parent is going to allow that. But a 7-year-old child with a device connected to the internet, that 7-year-old is talking to millions and millions of strangers across the globe. And that digital device can then bring harm to the child. So online harm is much more bigger than the physical harm where there's a stranger knocking in front of the door. So we think this online safety program is really what can then drive the message home. And then in terms of then the challenges that we are picking up is that obviously then there's platforms that then allow this inappropriate or harmful content to come through. And then again, their community standards, because each and every platform will have their own community standards, meaning that we allow this, these are the rules of the game. If you want to become a user of our platform, these are the standards that you need to abide with. But we find that they are not standardized. You know, what the community standards on X, which was formerly Twitter, is different from, for example, what TikTok is saying. So we are really edging and working closely with them that if they could please align their community standards, especially taking into consideration the FPB's classification guidelines as well. But this is the ongoing engagements that we're having with the platforms, that they need to please standardize, because what then happens when a content is blocked or removed on one platform, what then the user does, they then go post the same platform in another platform and it then gets allowed. But if there's standardization, we can then avoid users jumping across multiple, or at least seeing harmful content across multiple platforms. And then again, the limitations in terms of technical capabilities and technology, and this is the space that we are seeing. We realize that we require a lot of technical capabilities in terms of cybersecurity and being able to access the dark web, because in normal platforms that all of us are aware of, in most cases, you know, they are able to take down content. We can issue them with notices for takedown. But there are dark web platforms that are operating under the front sort of web that all of us are, and we are not able to go into, because this is where the syndicates operate. This is where illegal content is then being sort of, there's a formal trading where there's production of this child sexual abuse material, and then there's a selling and buying of such platforms. But we're really looking at ways on how best can we capacitate ourselves, obviously working with law enforcement agencies to intercept some of this illegal trading underworld. And then obviously then in terms of what the Act allows us to do within the social media space, there's still those limitations, but we're working very closely with the department on then how then do we ensure that the legislation enables us to be able to monitor and regulate social media platforms. Again, with the manual or laborers analysis. So our child protection officers, unfortunately, and this contributes to to the psychosocial sort of well-being, where they have to physically look at images and videos of those child sexual abuse material and then come up with reports which can then be shared with the prosecution. But we are looking at technology and any other AI technologies that can assist us to quickly do the analysis rather than a physical human being who has to sit down and watch those. But there's a lot of psychosocial support that we are giving to our child protection officers, just for them to debrief, for them to be able to just stand back. And because I mean, having to watch this and go through this on a daily basis can actually have a negative impact. So working very closely with our partners and with international benchmarks, with our partners internationally on the best practice and the standard, to ensure that we can then give them a sort of support. Obviously, we would like to do more, Honorable Chair and members, on the online safety and education awareness, but we can only do so much given the financial constraints that we have. You'll find that we are not able to cover as much ground as we would like to. We can only do as much as we can, but so far we have been effective. But we still think there's a lot that we still need sort of to do to ensure that we can get the message across. But we're also looking at partnerships with the platforms themselves to assist us in spreading the message across. Then the countermeasures on the challenges, what is it that we are putting in place just to make sure that we can deal with those that we can deal with, notwithstanding the issues of budget constraints and any other issues. So like I've said, Chair, that there's this monitoring of activity specifically in line with what is defined as prohibited and harmful content. We have taken down we've issued takedown notices, and I've shared the numbers with the committee as well. And then the program that I'm saying, we work very closely with NGOs, we work very closely with different schools, different communities. Basic education is also one of our critical stakeholder. UNICEF is one of our critical stakeholder in ensuring that we spread the message across, and ensuring that kids and teachers and parents as well are aware of their responsibilities and how to protect themselves and those that are under their care on the online space, and really creating a progressive and a safe online space for our children. And like I've said, working very closely with the department in addressing addressing the legislative gaps. And then lastly, this is done with great work with the law enforcement agencies. And I think this is one of the key important ones, that we work very, very closely with the law enforcement agencies, SAPS, the prosecution, the NPA. They rely a lot on us in assisting them in the analysis of these cases. And like I've said initially, that all the cases that we have been involved or we have worked with the SAPS on, those cases have led to sort of convictions. But the issues of us having to have capacity, technological capacity, as well as the human resources capability for us to be able to on the fly analyze these images so that there's no backlog to the cases, but we're able then to proactively and efficiently assist law enforcement agencies in dealing with those cases. We work very closely, like I've said, with civil society, because we're realizing that, and we also work with international partners. For example, we are a member of the Global Online Safety Regulators Network, which is a network of regulators across the globe. We then share lessons learned. We share on best practices, how best can we work together, because we realize that the online space and the online safety issues are not just limited to one jurisdiction. There could be images of children or any other content, prohibited content produced in South Africa, but within seconds, it finds itself in other jurisdictions across the world. So it's important that we work very closely with partners across the world. We are also a member of the InHope, which is the international network of hotlines. So for any child sexual abuse material that you are picking up on the online space, you can then lodge it with us and then call our hotline or lodge it with our hotline through our website, and ensuring that we can then flag it and then we can take it forward. And this helps with the SAPS and all the law enforcement agencies in ensuring that we can then cap or at least remove such content from the online space, and ensuring that that evidence can be handed out to the law enforcement agencies. Honorable Chair and members, that's the long and short of it in terms of the work of the FPB, but we are saying there's still a lot that we can do. We appreciate the progressiveness of the Amendment Act in 2019, which then gave FPB teeth for us to act, for us to be able, especially anticipating that content has moved from brick and mortar. Content is now consumed online, and us working very closely with social media platforms in us ensuring that the online space becomes a really safe space, specifically for our children and those that are under our care. Thank you so much, Honorable Chair. That's the last from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CE. Through you, Chair, if I may, just to add a couple of things. The last slide, CE, really just gives the emphasis from the side of the department. Honorable members, I also want to perhaps highlight or underscore the challenge that has been put. The FPB, as you can see, the enormous amount of work that they do. They are quite under-resourced. We transfer about 100 million on an annual basis to the entity. I will try and get the exact amount. But if you then look at the scope of the work that they need to do, and in terms of the coverage and what he then said is that they have been, as a department, to encourage that there should be establishment of a digital ICT or digital communications regulatory ICT forum, because they obviously the issues are cross-cutting, and this will then assist in terms of streamlining the regulations by enhancing then the cooperation and minimizing duplication efforts in the country, in order then to basically ensure proper regulation in this space. And this is under the chairship of the ICASA, the Independent Communications Regulator. I would like to also underscore, honorable members, that as we chair the G20 presidency for this year as a country, and the department is leading on the digital economy working group, this matter is of pertinent importance, especially now we're going to be looking at the AI, the artificial intelligence issues. This stems, honorable members, from the Leaders Summit declaration when they met in Rio last year in November, where they recognized that digital platforms have reshaped the digital ecosystem and online interactions by amplifying information dissemination and facilitating communications within and across the geographic boundaries, as the CE has alluded. So how the digital and information realm and the acceleration in terms of the evolution of technologies such as artificial intelligence has dramatically impacted the speed, the scale, and the reach in terms of the misinformation and disinformation, hate speech, and other forms of online harms. And therefore, the heads of states and government emphasize the need for digital platform transparency, as well as the responsible use by all in terms of online. And we were there charged to come up with then the relevant policies and applications in terms of legal frameworks that will work within the platforms. This is the work that we're currently busy with under the chairship of South Africa and under the chairship of our working group, which is the Digital Economy Working Group. And we do appreciate the participation of both industry players, knowledge partners, which is then the ITU, the UNESCO, the UNDP, and many others who have contributed to this. And I think obviously the valuable role of our regulators as well. Lastly, from our side, I mean, as the C has indicated, we are then looking in as far as building on from a policy and regulatory instrument. We do not want to necessarily stifle innovation or the use of the digital platforms. Obviously, we do see them as useful, but we just want to ensure that we do protect the most vulnerable in society. And obviously, the issue with regards to women as well as children online, and to make sure that the necessary instruments and regulatory principles, they are adhered to by all. And once again, I'd like to underscore the issue that we do appreciate the work of the FPB. We continue to assist them as a department. And this is obviously premised on the key principles that we had in terms of the white paper, which identify the protection of children offline as well as online must be equal. Plus well as then the coordinated digital media and information literacy efforts, as well as the reports of that, which we do get regularly, and now it has been presented to this particular platform. Thank you very much, Chair, for that. I just thought it was important to underscore these key issues and the work that we are doing, moving this program forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Colleagues, we have now heard the presentation, and I will ask my questions after everybody has asked, but moving into the digital space is actually very frightening if one listens to what has been presented to us today. So I hope the questions are going to come, and I'm going to hand over. Let's see a show of hands of who would like to ask questions. I see Honorable Pinar's hand is up. Mardia, if you can just help.
Gee, I just see Mr. Pinar's hand. I don't see any other hands.
Okay, before I hand... I see
I'm sorry, Chair.
Good morning,
Chair,
Honorable.
Macy Kennedy here. I can't raise my hand. I would like to speak also.
All right, Honorable Kennedy, I have noted you, and Honorable Modise and Honorable Pinar, but before we hand over to them for questions, Mardia, please can we also acknowledge the apology from the Minister? We forgot to do that at the beginning. Thank you very much. Honorable Pinar, you, followed by Honorable Modise and then Honorable Kennedy. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, this is such an important meeting today, and a lot of issues were discussed, and it might be overlooked to some extent, but the weight and the gravity of some of the issues we discussed here have far-reaching consequences. And I think I must start, Chairperson, to give my support to the department in terms of I think especially when it comes to the sexualization of children, the harm on children, that must be rooted out. And whatever support this committee can give you as a department, please speak up. I think you'll have the support of the entire select committee when it comes to giving you more support or teeth. As someone with young children myself, it's something I'm very worried about going into the future. Chairperson, but let me touch on a few other things. The speaker today spoke about the advocacy of hatred based on identifiable groups. Now, I want to hear from the presenters today. Some of the things we've seen recently online, and I'm going to use the example of Julius Malema singing "Kill the Bull, Kill the Farmer." Would that fall under your purview? Do you have any way you can investigate it? Have you investigated that, or is that not part of your purview? Because at the end of the day, it's still content being shared, and taking your definition on that, that you shared with us, it could possibly fall under that. Now, if you're telling me, listen, no, that is only the Human Rights Commission, fine. But I just want to get an idea from you, because it does fall in the classification you shared with us. Is that something you investigate? Because if I can also make a video, and I can, for example, say, shoot the communist, kill the communist, and I share that with people, is that something you investigate? Does that fall under your purview? If I share it on Facebook or on WhatsApp, I just want to get a bit of an idea where your powers lie, where they start and where they end, please. And if you have investigated the video of Malema singing "Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer." With that being said, you spoke about disinformation. Disinformation, again, it's one of those things, something that's disinformation today is the truth tomorrow. It can be so easily abused. And I want to hear from the Commission or the CEO maybe, who decides what is disinformation and what are your sources? Chairperson, things like this can so easily be construed to fit a certain narrative. And I just want to get clarity on who decides what is the disinformation or not. Again, one of the regulations that you spoke about, or one of the guidelines you spoke about, is harmful material. I would like to know exactly what is considered harmful, and who decides that? Is it a board? Is it a group of advocacy groups? Is it politicians? Something that for me is maybe the truth. You can consider harmful because it might taint the image of certain individuals or politicians. But then you as an industry can then say, no, that's harmful information. So I just want to get clarity on that as well, Chair. And then deepfakes. I think that is it's something a lot of attention should be focused on. I mean, I've seen videos of Donald Trump kissing Vladimir Putin, and it looks 100% real. I mean, and I want to know from the Commission, where's your powers when it comes to stuff like that? Do you consider that more of like a cartoon as a fake? Because we know our legislation is very strong when it comes to protecting cartoon creators and those images we sometimes see of politicians in the newspapers. Does it fall under that? Is it something different? Is it a new thing we're still trying to determine? Because deepfakes is going to be used in the future, especially in politics, and people who are for or against our country can use that to have anybody say anything, and unfortunately the majority of people is going to believe it. And I want to know, what is your stance on that? What is your recommendations on that? How do you see it moving forward in terms of regulation or no regulation? As somebody who believes first and foremost in freedom of speech, regulation when it comes to speech is also very, very dangerous. I feel it can be abused, as we see in a lot of countries. And on that same note, you spoke about the alignment of standards when it comes to some of these industries like your Facebook or your X or your Instagram or whatever. Now, I understand the frustration from your side because X doesn't have the same regulations as Facebook, for example. But are we now telling these private companies, okay, you must adapt to us, to our industry in South Africa, just for us? Because I can also understand that because Twitter, for example, or X, is not even available in China because they don't have freedom of speech. But we have it here. And I know in Russia, for example, they have Twitter, but it's highly regulated in a different way because there's also some attacks on freedom of speech that side. So how do you expect these multinational corporations or to align with their standards? Because they operate in different countries who all have different rules and regulations when it comes to freedom of speech. You spoke about DVDs. I understand that the concerns there, but I must also say, I think don't sell DVDs, DVD players anymore. I heard the incident you're referring to about the contents, and it was disturbing. But I think, again, you know, the majority, I think, above 90% of the harmful content, or let's not even use that word because I'm still asking you to define it, but especially the sexualization of children or violence is being shared on groups like WhatsApp. You know, videos are being shared. I think we all have received videos that are very violent, and like you correctly said, there's no preamble where when you receive those videos about what it is, and then you're so disturbed about it, and you think, yes, how are these things making its way out? And are you saying, listen, we're trying to mitigate that, we're trying to control that more on WhatsApp? And the reason I'm asking this also, there's a very interesting debate, Chairperson, that I listened to a few years ago, and it's how do we control, or should we even control, what's happening, for example, or regulate on WhatsApp? Because the debate that was being made is if terrorists are discussing a plot over a cell phone network, they're calling each other. Now, we'll pick any one of our cell phone networks. We don't try to control the cell phone company. We make sure we target the individuals who made the terrorist plot. Now, the same debate can be made. We are now trying to control the social media companies instead of the focus being on the individuals making the content. I know there's a lot to unpack there, Chairperson, and you know, and it speaks to a lot of freedoms and freedom of the individual, freedom of speech, and that's why we should be so careful with any legislation or direction we head. It will have far-reaching consequences. I always say, you know, the legislation we make today, you know, can be misused in 20, 30 years' time. Just because we don't agree with certain speech or content or disinformation, like what one of the speakers said, doesn't mean it's wrong. And there is a fine line, and I hope we can engage further on what those lines are and where we start taking away the freedom of the individual and their opinions. But yeah, thank you, Chair. I know that there's a lot of things, but yeah, I think it had to be said. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Mabilu.
It's Mr. Modise, Honorable Modise, Chair, and then Asim, Honorable Van den Berg has also raised his hand, as well as Honorable Kennedy.
Thank you. Sorry, Honorable Modise, not Mabilu.
No, thank you, Chair. I thought maybe it's a question of seniority because he's a bit older. And let me give him a chance to speak for me. But, no, thank you so much.
Okay.
No, thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if I should switch on my video. I'm home. I don't know if my parliamentary background is there. No, it's not there. Okay, Chair. You know, this thing of the presentation from the Film and Publication Board, if you go through it as an individual, especially that one is not an expert on the subject matter, it's really scary. The pace in which technology is moving in, and the exposure that people like are towards different content that is shared on social media. And as a father to two teenage daughters, I'm sitting here and I'm wondering, they're both at school, they both have phones with them as we speak. I'm wondering what is it that they are watching now during the breaks when there's no teacher in class. It's extremely scary. Growing up, we used to be told that when a helicopter flies over, you can make noise and ask them to bring a baby to your family because you need a little brother or a little sister. But you can't say that to the generation today, that the child comes through a helicopter because they're exposed to this content on TV. Extremely harmful at times, Yet assisting at other times, it's like having a car. You know, it's an ideal. It helps you in an emergency. You can go from point A to point B without any hassle and all of that. But at the same time, you can be killed for the particular car. You can be in an accident for the same car. You can be hijacked and all of that. And I think it's the same concept around the social media content that is being shared and people are being exposed to. So, Mina, my concern or comment, which is posed as a question, will be directed to the minister as opposed to the presenters. Because I believe that the DM is not a brand new individual within the department or the ministry itself. At some stage, he was the minister leading that department. I just want to check from him, Chair, because I'm sitting here and I want to believe that one way or the other, minister, the DM at the time, as a minister, he would have proposed certain legislation for the purpose of, you know, having control of some sort over this thing, a regulation, if you may. And now that he had an opportunity to come back to the same ministry, DM, is there anything or any proposal that you might have for this select committee that you would want to lobby us on in order to help the department and its agencies to be able to regulate what we have been presented with here, especially around the social media, the content that is being shared. Member Pinar makes an example of a song and its content and what could be interpreted from that song, which it could be right or wrong. But to date, I do not think there's to my knowledge, any incident that has been reported, and it's linked to the song itself from its origin back in the day up until today. But for you specifically, DM, from your expert view, having dealt with this ministry for almost 5-6 years now, what if we were to ask you on now, what is it that you would want us as a committee to support you on, whether as part of the legislation, as part of the members' bill, as a part of, you know, debate in Parliament? What is it that you would want to lobby us on in order to help you and the agencies in terms of regulations? Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Modise, Honourable Kennedy, and then Honourable van den Berg.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Good morning, everyone. My concern is about learners at schools where artificial intelligence is mostly used. As we have about 9 provinces and many schools, I just want to know how many schools are you able to reach out in connection of awareness campaigning of this prohibited content? How long are you able to spread your wings to schools? And secondly, how do you deal with those physical shops or whatever you call it, building, selling prohibited material to people outside? Are there no recommendations that you can make, like maybe for those shops or physical buildings to be closed? And lastly, about hawkers selling those prohibited material. How are you regulating or controlling people like hawkers selling those prohibited material? What effort are you making towards that? Thank you.
Honourable van den Berg.
Good morning to all. Yes, I'm not going to speak a lot because I'm feeling a bit under the weather today. It seems that I now got the flu. But what I would like to ask, please, is the department did not report on staff content. and also what the budget is like, because I would like to measure how productive they are using their fundings. And then my second question, would it not be wiser to subscribe to outsourced digital media regulation from, say, more advanced countries to monitor our content and to perhaps red flag or send information to us? And then how do you draw the line between freedom of consumption and interference of freedom, or even perhaps spying on citizens? Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Honorable van den Berg. I would also like to pose some questions. DM, to you and your department, I'd like to know how you justify the department's delay in updating legislation to give the FPB a full mandate over online harms when digital threats are evolving faster than any of our policy frameworks. And then with regard to that, who benefits from this delay, the public or the platforms? You also admit that global platforms do not align with FPB standards. So I'd like to know what's stopping your department from mandating compliance through legislation or binding MOUs. Then I'd also like to know, with budget hypocrisy, why does your department continue to expand the FPB's responsibilities without matching that with budget increases or human resources, as Honorable van der Berg alluded to? With regard to child sexual abuse, we see large volumes of this being analyzed. Last year, over 170,000 items. But I'd like to know, where is the department's proactive national strategy to disrupt the source and supply chain of this content? I'd also like to, let me just go down where I wrote down. You also referred to, in your presentation, the...
Excuse me, Chair. Can you repeat your last question?
Okay. With regard to child sexual abuse, we see large volumes of child sexual abuse content being analyzed. If my memory serves me correctly, doing a bit of research, there was over 170,000 items last year being analyzed. I'd like to know, in view of that, where is the department's proactive national strategy to disrupt the source and supply chain of this content? We cannot just react after SAP's referrals. It must be done before that. And then in your presentation, you outline countermeasures, but we'd like to see where what the impact metrics are. How do you measure success beyond counting workshops and issuing notices? Then I'd also like to know, with regard to the enforcement committee, are they appointed or are they elected for a term? And with regard to a ruling, how long does it take this committee before a ruling is made? And whilst they are sitting, can an offensive message remain on the platform? Thank you very much. Over to you, the department or the Minister, DM.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. I just want to say upfront to both the DG and the team, everyone is going to earn his salary today. If one looks at the type of questions that are being raised, because they cut across so many things. But I know we've got able people on the platform who will deal with those questions. But maybe before I deal with those that affect me directly, just to make this point that I'm also curious how Zama and the team DG are going to respond to this Julius Malema issue, Honorable Malema issue, because courts have pronounced on it. Now, I guess the question is, science is ongoing. Even courts get informed by the science as it evolves. And I guess the question is, do our guys have a view on this matter, not on the judgment, but on the nature of that thing? Because it's about hate speech. It's about more the evolution of hate speech. How has it been viewed before? How is it being viewed now? What are the scientific factors that inform it within the context of its legal definition? I'm sure our guys should be able to deal with that. To Honorable Modise, I just want to say to him, I'm not even 2 years as a minister. I think as a minister I was 1 year, 2 or 3 months or 4 months or something like that, I'm not sure. But not even 2 years. So I came here 2023 March. But it doesn't change the fact that what has been one's experience with regard to what could be proposed. I want to say upfront, I'm deliberately saying these things so that the technical guys, when they come, they can correct me if I have exposed my weaknesses in understanding some of these things. I just want to say, my understanding, Honorable Modise, is that I think DG has actually alluded to this. If we understand the purpose of this unit, this entity, it deals with managing, controlling, monitoring the huge dynamics aspect of society, which is evolving second by second at a pace that is very, very high. I just want to give an example. When I did law, the last time I remember, at a particular age, children were not allowed to marry. Girls about 12, boys about a particular age. Now, the question that needs to be answered, I'm sure our guys will, that's why I'm saying I find it exciting today. I'm sure our guys will help us understand this because they are analyzing this on day to day. I know if I look at the things my grandchildren understand now, having engaged with them, like what Honorable Modise said, some of the things they understand them, I needed to be at standard 6 to understand them. It explains the type of society Honorable Modise is speaking about. Why am I raising these issues? Is that the issues of resources, again, come to the fore. But the biggest challenge this department has, honorable members, is that trade-offs are very crucial because even the PFPP, even this entity itself, without healthy connectivity, without society having access to internet in an affordable way, without society being trained to use internet properly, they've got a society which is difficult to educate because of, in the modern world, if every one of us was connected, their job would not be as difficult as it is now. What does this mean? It means a lot of money needs to go to foundational infrastructure, which is critical for the success of their work. So there's a challenge of trading off. I think DG at some stage in the team will present this. We've spoken about this to various portfolio committees about how central is digital technology currently and the future, how critical it is that resources be focused on enabling that space. Because when you put resources to connectivity, to training, to access, you are actually enabling almost every other department. You reduce cost in health, you reduce cost in education, you promote quality and so on. In other words, it's a trade-off of resources at our disposal, which maybe one day DG can advise and guide. How shall we? I'm saying, Honorable Ndisi, the evolution of society dictate that this entity gets more resources, but there's a trade-off between locating a foundational infrastructure, which is critical for their success, and giving money to them as an entity, and so on. And then maybe let me allow the DG to lead, and I'll come back at the end to say one or two other issues. But all I want to say, DG, I find it exciting. The questions are not easy, but I'm also going to be educated as you guys respond. DG.
Well, thank you very much to the DM, and I would like to also thank the very interesting questions, and I think more than anything else, the expressed interest from the members of the Select Committee. We do share the same sentiments, honorable members, and we appreciate this opportunity and many more, because I think it does help to spread the work that we're doing. And I think the invite with regards to the question by Honorable Modise is probably then the core of the substance of the purpose for our meeting, our engagement today, and the proactiveness of it. Maybe to start off with the question, Honorable Penal, thank you. Yes, we all have children. I'm very passionate about this, and honorable members, I think as we do further engagements, perhaps through the offices of the Minister and the DM, we will extend invites to yourself, and especially during this year as we chair G20, because you get to hear even from other countries, partly the challenges that they do face, because they also do face. Similarly, we were regulating, as an example, we were regulating issues of fake news, and then now we've got the DeepSec issues coming, and as you said, so these deepfakes, they continue to evolve. So technology moves faster than the regulation in any geographic across the world. But perhaps in general, the position that I want to underscore again, with regards to both, I think the questions that were asked by Honorable Pina and other members of the Select Committee, the rights that one enjoys offline. So and I'm talking about the protection of personal information under the POPI Act, the human rights issues that you have, the right that one exercises under the Constitution, is the same rights in principle that one then should have online. So that has been the position of the country. And so then the issues with regards to if then somebody who does fake or disinformation for you, if someone does the hate speech, if someone then does character assassination, etc., the processes that one follows is the same processes that we do now. We are now saying, in as far as then the regulation with regards to your online, we first and foremost, there's definitely need for us to regulate online, and we're not trying to stifle, as you said, the innovation. We're not trying to stifle the enjoyment that one also has with regards to the use of social media platforms. We've been therefore encouraging, for example, the social media owners, platform owners, etc., to then say you also have a responsibility in the same way, because there has been a huge debate, and I think Honorable Van der Berg was raising this as well, to then say you have this is not going to be your mobile operators who will need to regulate because they also contract in terms of the third parties, which is then your platform providers, who would then have that responsibility to ensure that. Now, one of the issues that we try and encourage in South Africa, and that's why we say any form of a social media platform provider would need to have a jurisdiction in our country. And that means that instead of us therefore fighting battles in international sphere, which is going to be very costly, we've had that in the past where we've had to go, whether it's going to be to the United States or to The Hague, in order to fight these things, and we wouldn't have the legal financial muscles as well to have these protracted fines. So we would therefore firstly require that you would have some form of a jurisdiction presence within our borders, and therefore it would become easier for us to be able to engage you, and we would also require you to then adhere to our national laws and prescripts. The second issue then we're doing, as we said, then we are now working with the within the in the global. I think there was the issue with regards to the multilateral cooperation. Yes, we do enjoy multilateral cooperation. Primarily, first is the nature of our sector. It's cross-border, or it's borderless, as we call it. So we wouldn't know. So somebody can allege to have even a mobile number, especially when you're online, a mobile number in South Africa, or however it has been, and you've seen the situation of people numbers being coined. We've seen the situation where someone else is able to reach you, perpetuating to be somebody else, and therefore you end up either assisting, or they're requesting assistance, or even just your entire data is hacked. So there's a number of barriers and programs that we're working on. As you know, we issued last year the data and cloud policy, and now we're working with regards to the regulations. And these are then the issues that we're talking about, to then say the issue of data is very critical. And firstly, that's the right of the individual who must be able to release that data. And we're working with POPI, information regulator in this regard, as well as, and then if it transfers, either if it is a situation of it being on a particular website or domain name. That's why we also have the domain name regulator, who will then assist us in as far as to take down that information. If it is information that is then circulating with regards to WhatsApp, etc., and in terms of online, we bring the FPB. So there are a number of them. And honorable members, then perhaps this then underscores the issue that in 2016, when we introduced the ICT white paper, our intent as the department and the proposal was to say, let's have a single regulator to be able to make sure that these cross-cutting issues were able to ensure that we've got one central place where it has been managed. Unfortunately, honorable members, and due, as I said, to hear numerous debates, including debates in Parliament, it was then felt that the regulators, especially, as I said, on the side of the ICASA, needed to remain independent. And so what we then had to do in order to ensure that there is going to be strong cooperation amongst them, we then encouraged that there should be this cooperation agreement that is being signed, or the MOU that was referred to by the CE, and then also as the establishment of this particular forum. They are obviously then looking within the forum on how then to ensure and address these issues with regards to the cross regulations, or that are spilling over to various mandates. One of those, and I want to just perhaps underscore, was the recent one where we worked with the Department of Basic Education in as far as then during the period of the matric results, and the matric results information was then by sake of a better word, hijacked by a particular website where it was issuing this information. And first and foremost, I mean, that was obviously transgression of the POPI. That matter is sitting with the law enforcement. We're cooperating, we work with the law enforcement agencies, with the Department of Basic Education, as well as with the information regulator, to then take this matter to book. And as you know, then obviously the justice system would follow its processes in this regard. But we just want to underscore the issue that not only is it about the multilateral cooperation, but we're also working at the national level on this. At a multilateral cooperation, I think Honorable Pina asked the question. I just want to underscore that we, at that level, they come up with frameworks. They come up with toolkits, they come up with guidelines and what we call playbooks now. But they basically assist to guide countries, because your national laws will take precedent. So in our perspective, obviously for us, as we do go and participate in there, we try as best as possible to also bring in our sister department and sister entities who are relevant on the subject topic. But if not, we then bring back the various toolkits and as well as guidelines. And that will inform the shaping of our national prescripts as well as national policies. And that is what we're currently working on, as I said, now with our sister department, which is the GCIS, together with the relevant entities and the relevant regulators, as far as then looking at a policy as well as a regulatory instrument to then address fully the issues of misinformation, disinformation, hate speech, as well as harmful content. With regards to the other instrument that will be coming up within this financial year is that we're finalizing the audio and audiovisual policy, and this will then talk about then the regulations with regards to, again, platform providers and in terms of then the online as well. And again, it's already prescribing the role that the FPB is going to play in this. I think Honorable Modise clearly summed it up well. I want to underscore the issue again, honorable members, and I think that the Deputy Minister alluded to this. The issue with regards to the responsibility, it's a responsibility by all. But then now it comes to the very respective roles that you do have. So citizens themselves, by and large, have a responsibility. And it is that particular responsibility that we are now seeing it is therefore abused or misused. So the analogy that Honorable Modise says, everyone will enjoy the right in terms of having a car, but you find that there is a much healthier adherence to the laws and regulations, the rules of the road as to you need to drive at a 60, you must have on a seatbelt, etc. And this is what now the FPB is trying to also then encourage in terms of then the online world as well, to then say, please make sure that you exercise due prudence. You need to ensure that you are not harming the rights of the other individual. You are not exploiting those particular rights, and that also then you're ensuring the protection of others as well as yourself online. It is very difficult with regards to certain other behaviors because there's sometimes a thin line, even with children, for example, where you want to think that you're sharing content with your friends, but then that particular content may either be seen harmful or it is also exposing yourself to just the general risk. These are the things that we also do encourage honorable members. You'll see at the beginning of each year, and I was hoping that the FPB will talk about it. We literally do try run all sorts of omni-channel campaigns, meaning that it's on your online as well as offline, where we're encouraging parents to say, do not share information about your children, where they go to school, etc. Do not share information about when you're going to go on holiday, etc. Because whilst you think that information is of use and of interest, but it could also end up being harmful because then it can be exploited on the basic level. And then obviously then there are serious offenses. Those ones are the ones that we do then work with, as I said, the security clusters to then ensure that we take off. And that I think even the chair has alluded to some of the success cases that we do have. What we're also encouraging with the regulator is that on a quarterly basis, we do provide updates publicly to then say, these are the number of offenses, but because of 4B, we are now restricted to name and shame who then these offenders are. And they can only be answered after a successful prosecution. Now, that prosecution can take a number of years to conclude, but we are then trying to find other means in as far as to ensure that we do provide or we do sensitize the citizens to be more vigilant online, especially, as I said, the most vulnerable in society. With regards to, as I try to wrap up, I want to also give I think Honorable Modise was asking the DM in terms of what we need as a department. Honorable members, I'm happy to then at least report that we have now a revised organizational structure in the department. We now have a new branch and unit, and this also responds to the question that was posed by Honorable Van der Berg. We now have a new branch in the department that deals with media and content. Specifically, we have a unique section that will deal with content classification and online safety, dealing with online content classification as well as online safety, obviously working with the FPB, as well as the other regulators. Our intent now is obviously to try and to capacitate that fully. We are under resource and constrained in terms of the resources. And this probably then also answers the question that was also posed to then say, why would you, I think by Honorable Chair, how do we then expand the mandate of the FPB? We had expanded the mandate of FPB and we had made requests to National Treasury for additional funding. You would unfortunately, twice in terms of the request that we've made with National Treasury, in both instances, though that was not acceded to or it was rejected. And unfortunately, though, we cannot hold back the mandate, as you have also underscored the importance of it. So we've had to now try and work with the little that we had. We try to assist the FPB where we can, and also then seeking international as well as national cooperation in order then to look at alternative resources. But coming to then the question that was posed by Honorable Van der Berg with regards to can we not outsource this? We need to build that capacity. I think every single country, this particular area, it is going to be irresponsible in as far as to outsource issues of regulatory compliance as well as monitoring. I'm not so sure of another jurisdiction that does that, but we will conduct that particular research. But just to underscore that eventually we're going to need this capacity. We will need this capacity in-house. We will need to build on it, and we need to ensure that as a country we are able to enforce this regulation or regulatory or monitoring in terms of online adequately by ourselves. And that is why the work that we do at an international level assist us in, as far as you're saying, learning best practice, looking at these various toolkits as well as guidelines, and obviously adapting them to our own needs and making sure that they are adequately able to respond. But you're quite correct that we don't have the reach, and those are the limitations with regards to the issue of resources. I'd like to pause here through you, DM and Honorable Chair, and invite the chairperson of the FPB as well as the CE. I was hoping that we also have the enforcement agency also on board. If there are, maybe then they could also add on. Thank you very much. Ken?
Thank you. Thank you very much, DG. I think you have covered us to a great extent. I will still just hand over to the CEO, the acting CEO, and where necessary, he can also bring in the executive for regulatory. But just to underscore a couple of things, that I think the nature of legislative changes and the length of time that it takes and the processes that are involved are some of the major contributing factors to what may seem to be delays, and not necessarily that there are things that are stuck, whether at the department level, but also because of the pace at which technology changes and the demands of industry. I think that is what makes it a challenge for us for legislation to catch up, because it requires even legislation itself to be quite agile. Because, for instance, the issues that relate to the platforms that we regulate, you find that whilst we are dealing with a particular type of platform, as it was recorded in the legislation that is currently in place, new types of platforms are introduced, and the manner in which content is disseminated evolves very quickly, and that then also lends you into the courts, which has found, which we find ourselves also dealing with, that there is quite a few matters that are in court where we are being challenged because the legislation itself is not crystal clear, exactly because of I guess of the way technology changes, and also because I think industry is also itself does have pushbacks, because even though we are making sure that the manner in which we are regulating is a balancing act, and it is no way infringing on freedom of expression and freedom of consumption, but we very much are focusing on making sure that we classify the content. And I think one member did mention earlier that it is about getting pre-warning before you consume, that you need to be warned. So the content needs to be clearly classified. That is important. So it's not to say that people who choose to consume certain type of content are not allowed to do so, but there needs to be proper classifications and proper warnings. But having said that, obviously there is content that is prohibited, and that is particularly content that is that relates to children and any other harmful content. And there is clear legislation that that prohibits such content, and that is within our mandate. I think the other detailed issues I would allow the acting CEO to go into at this point. Acting CEO.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe just to go through the other questions, Honorable Pienaar, on the controversial song on hate speech. The Human Rights Commission, I think as a Chapter 9 institution, is more empowered, and it has dealt with this issue. And the courts have also sort of dealt with that issue. So it's specifically on this issue, and I think issues of the similar matter. Chapter 9 institution like Human Rights Commission will be much more empowered, and as it has more muscle than what an FPB would do. But we work very closely with them, like I said, fellow regulators. But the prohibitions on hate speech and propaganda for war, these are the prohibitions and provisions taken from the Bill of Rights on freedom of expression. So it's not specifically just for the FPB, but they are in line with the Bill of Rights on the freedom of speech, that we have freedom of expression, but is limited, there are certain limitations in line with that. So it was just to align with what the Bill of Rights is then saying. And then on what constitutes mis and dis in information, in our view, is that because we're dealing with harmful content, and Honorable Pienaar, I think it links to your next question on who decides what is harmful content. Is it us, or who actually decides? So there's a definition on the Act on what harmful content is. But what is defined there is that if it causes emotional or psychological harm, or it causes any harm to the person consuming it, it can then be defined as harmful content. And I think it is also clear from what the chairperson of council was saying, and I think DG, that if it's content specifically on against children, I think there's no gray areas. It's a clear line that children cannot be abused, children cannot be sexualized, and those images being sold for a fee. So it is clear on that, and that content then causes harm to children, because it has a lifelong effect on the psychological impact of the child. I mean, the child could find themselves on the internet when they are still a child. By the time they are adults, they were innocent. They never gave consent for the images or videos to be on the internet, but only to find that now in their adulthood, they are finding that their images and videos were distributed without their consent, and this causes harm to them. And I agree with you, Honorable Pienaar, on obviously the advent of technology and deepfakes and the blurry line between what is real and what is not real. So although there's new advancements in technology, but it's also making it a little bit difficult. So for us, it's more on the users of platforms to be vigilant, to be able. So it's more on the training and education on online safety, rather than the stick, but more on be vigilant when you are seeing this, when you are seeing this image, please apply some scrutiny to it, have some skepticism, especially young children, as they have unsupervised access to devices, and they can see these images, and they can already develop that intelligence at a young age to say, but when I'm seeing something, I know that there's AI, and they're being taught about this in schools. They need to apply that skepticism and say, is this real or is this fake? And then how then do I deal with something that I believe that it is not true? So I do agree with you, Honorable Pienaar, that there's technology makes it a little bit difficult, but the proposal and the solution, I think it's more on people being aware and being vigilant to see what is real and what is not. And on the non-standardization of community guidelines, so no, we're not really telling platforms to say, you shall have these guidelines in line with our classification guidelines, but we are just saying, let's at least have alignment. They may not be word for word, but let at least have alignment, because we are all dealing with the same issues that are on X are the same issues that are on TikTok. So although they still have the independence as private organizations, private entities, commercially driven, they still committed, and at least in my engagements with them, there's that commitment for them to say, because they do have customized guidelines depending on the jurisdictions. And I think you did mention that, for example, in other jurisdictions, in Russia and other jurisdictions, where there's conservativeness within that country, they will adjust their jurisdiction. But South Africa is a democratic society. We are guided by those principles. So the aim really in our engagements with the platforms, it's that sort of standardization, not necessarily saying you shall have them aligned to you shall have them as our classification guidelines, but it's more on standardization so that, culprits and bad actors on the internet do not find, loopholes where they can then move and jump around various platforms. And yes, on the videos being sold, yes, the numbers are less on the videos that are being sold in CBDs and those that were confiscating. But indeed, over and above videos, there are also portable devices that our young children can then buy and then consume this at home. So what then do we do with this? It's confiscated, and I think Honorable Kennedy, you also asked on what then do we do on hawkers who are selling prohibited content. So this, with the help of the SAPS, material gets confiscated, and then in cases where there's child sexual abuse material found in those DVDs or portable drives, then criminal cases are then opened with those perpetrators. So there is action that is then being taken with the assistance of the SAPS for cases to be open. So, and then I think just on generally is that the aim is not necessarily just to, especially because we're operating in a democratic society, it's about the balancing act. The balance between freedom of expression as in line with the Bill of Rights, but also how then do we create a responsible society, especially given the culture and how South Africa functions as a society. So it's that balancing act. And with the evolving technology, it becomes a little bit fluid, but we need to still have those guardrails that ensures that we can still build a principled, a society. Our children can still grow up in a society that still protects them, rather than having an open-ended, environment where anything goes. So for me, I think it's more about the balancing act. And then Honorable Kennedy on the how many schools. So we do our best, Honorable Kennedy, to get to as many schools as possible. So every quarter there's a targeted number that we then go into, obviously subject to the financial resources. But I must say we have really done well in terms of covering most of the provinces, especially the inland provinces, the rural provinces, because that's where we're realizing that we really need to send the message there. I mean, in urban areas, obviously, with certain schools, kids will be informed on certain things. They will be much more informed because they are seeing certain things and because they have the privileges. So we spend most of our times in the rural schools ensuring that we can spread the message there, because that's where we're realizing that, you know, information may not necessarily flow, but we do balance between the urban, covering the urban areas and the rural areas. Physical shop selling prohibited content, Honorable Kennedy, yes, we then, as part of the enforcement action, we can revoke their distribution license with us, and then they will have to reapply for that once they have showed that they indeed have removed that prohibited content. And then if they are not complying to the closure notice, then they can then be taken through the enforcement committee for them to enforce and then make a ruling on those. And then Honorable van der Berg, I think DG, you've touched on the outsourcing. But again, on the freedom of speech versus spying, I think I've already covered on that, on the balancing act. It's not an easy act, but I think it's a necessary work that all of us are committed to in terms of balancing the society and ensuring that the society that we are all working on and our kids are growing up in, it's sort of inclusive, but also balancing the freedom of expression as well, or freedom of speech. And then, Honorable Chair, I think on the non-alignment of guidelines on platforms, I talked to that as well, that the aim is just to get as close as possible to our guidelines, but we do not dictate. We're just saying, let's please align. But if there's content that we're picking up that it is harmful and is prohibited, we issue them with takedown notices, and they do take down the content. In terms of budget constraints, so what then, Honorable Chair, we are doing, and this is one of our key priorities as FTB, is that we're looking at how best can we ensure that we are self-sustainable with self-generated revenue, because we're regulating the industry. There are registration fees that they're paying us. There are penalties that they're paying us. And about 15% or so, between 10 and 15% of our revenue comes from self-generated revenue. And this is one of our performance indicators on how then can we increase that self-generated revenue, just so that we can be able to balance what we're getting from the fiscus, and how then do we become a self-sustainable entity, ensuring that we can still regulate the industry. And then the proactiveness on breaking the supply chain of this child sexual abuse material. I would have said in the slide that one capabilities that we are working on getting is it's working with law enforcement agencies and other partners on capacitating us on cybersecurity, so that we can be able to go into the underworld and identify, and because this is where the operations and the supply chain is taking place, where there's production and selling of child sexual abuse material, is not on the face value where all of us can see. So once we can then be able to penetrate that underworld, or the dark web as it is referred to, but we need skills in terms of cybersecurity. We need systems in terms of technology, which the SAPS and other law enforcement agencies can then assist us. But this is a continuing work, obviously, for us to be proactive and not just rely on cases being referred to us by the SAPS. Impact on countermeasures, I've noted that, Honorable Chair. I think indeed this is one that we will take sort of on our annual performance plan, or on our operational plan, on over and above just us saying these are the countermeasures. How do we measure impact? For example, how many children have we protected? If we are saying our main aim is to protect children, can we come back to the committee and say, this is the potential harm that could have been done, but we have managed to counter it, and this is the impact that we have had in the society. Also with the classification guidelines, with the ratings that we are issuing, what impact does that have on the society? I think my colleagues are here. We are taking, how then do we measure that, and how then do we report to to the department and also to the committee on that. And then maybe I'll then hand over to Advocate Lindhorst, the Executive for Regulatory Development, just to tag on the Enforcement Committee and also any other issues. There was a question on how long it takes for the Enforcement Committee to release a ruling. And Advocate, if you could also touch on any other issues that I may not have addressed. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, Chair, DM and members and the colleagues. On the Enforcement Committee, they are appointed for a period of 5 years, and operationally, when they work on a matter, they are required to make sure that the judgment is delivered at least within 45 days. And there was a question around whether if there's a prohibited content, what happened at the time the matter is before the Enforcement Committee. So the requirement is that any harmful content that is online, it has to be removed. And the Act requires the platforms to make sure that they preserve that evidence. So the fact that it's removed, it doesn't mean that we don't have such kind of evidence. So that is how the Enforcement Committee operates. Maybe to add, Chair, on other matters, because when you look at the legislation, I think all members are responding here, is that technology moves very fast. So as a regulator, we have that responsibility of ensuring that South Africans are being protected. What we also did as a regulator, to make sure that we really close the gap between the harm that we are faced with as a regulator and the responsibility to make sure that South Africans are protected. We have that responsibility of issuing guidelines. Guidelines are not binding documents, but they assist ordinary members of the public to be vigilant and assisted. So one of those that we issued was the peer-to-peer video sharing guideline. So this is a guideline that is available on our website, and when we do the education and awareness, is there to assist an ordinary South African, especially children, warning them in terms of how they're supposed to conduct themselves online. Because what we are seeing is that people freely exercise their freedom of expression through a posting on social media platforms, and we spoke about the issues of deepfakes. You are innocently posting your picture, but then technology can change that. But whilst we are also exercising your right to freedom of expression, you will be hurting others. And in the process, you are committing an offense. So that is what we also do to close that gap and make sure that we keep South Africans also educated and informed in terms of how to conduct themselves online. And around the issues of what constitute harmful content, what we also did, we engage with the members of the public to just understand that from their understanding, what is the meaning of harmful content. And we have received inputs, and we have a guideline. Again, this is not a law, but it's a compendium of all the issues that we are putting together as a regulator to ensure that when we are changing the legislation, working together with the department, at least we have that info. And it also assists us as we are doing our education and awareness to make sure that we engage on all those issues. Thank you, Chair.
Maybe before we go back to you, Chair. I know I've been interacting with the Chair. There's a tricky question I think Makosazana can assist on. I'm not assisting you, Makosazana. I think what Nico raised is an important point, and the DG dealt with it. Court decides on the basis of expertise and laws that are existing and on an ongoing expertise with regard to the latest development, with regard to what is harmful and not harmful. Human rights monitors where the government does actually allocate resources to protect the established rights. Are we able to know from Namakosazana? Let me just say, for instance, what Mr. Malema said, it may be said, I may be using a wrong example, it may be said it is not harmful now historically, as the law has been interpreted. Is that static? If not static, whose purview or what institution deals with that? Because just to start one point before I hand over to the chair.
Thanks, DM. So let me start from the FPB point of view. So when you look at the offenses that are available in terms of the Act and the definition of what is prohibited content, and hate speech is one of those. But I think we all know that there can be a situation of a hate speech. It has to be judged on the basis of its own fact. So now what we are sitting with is from the FPB point of view. Remember, we regulate the creation of films, games, and certain publications. So if one is going to an Imbizo in a stadium and sing the similar song or make any form of hate, that is not within the jurisdiction of the FPB because it is in a particular setting. So the person can then either open a case or approach the Human Rights Commission, and then they will follow through in terms of their remedies with the Equality Court. But now, because of technology, if now it's online, then that is where the FPB comes in. But when do we come in? Because when do our mandate starts and end? It's only on complaints. So as FPB, we cannot proactively investigate. It has to be through a complaint of an individual that will say, I have seen this hate speech on the internet through this social media platform, please investigate. Then that is when the FPB will investigate. After collecting all the necessary evidence and interviewing the witnesses, then take that matter to the enforcement committee. So that is where our mandate actually ends. But what we have seen since the amendment of the Act, we really get those kind of complaints because now, as a consumer, South Africans have various platforms. So that is the other legislative gap that we are identifying, that you have some offenses that are in the Act, but consumers have a lot of other platforms that they can approach when they are experiencing such form of harm. So that is where our mandate starts, and it's only on receipt of the complaint. Thanks.
Thank you. Then, Chair, as we hand over to you, I think the team has responded to the best of its ability. And I repeat, I found it to be a moment for all of us to engage with these issues. But the other key point I thought I wanted to raise is that the issue of an agile legislation to societal changes as they are determined by the current technology is going to be a huge question. Normally, our laws and policies take a long time to come to place on a matter that is confronting us at the moment. Sometimes by the time the laws come to exist, whatever that was being responded to has caused a lot of damage. I think, again, I want to insist, the issue of technology is not only going to apply, in my view, to society, it's also going to apply into the lawmaking. That, for instance, when you put a bill in place, because PFP would have said, we think this is a problem, it needs a policy. For that policy to be effective, it needs legislation. And the harm is being caused at a given point in time. You need a legislation in the technological era that is very agile. In other words, maybe we move fast in the issue of connecting society. I'll repeat this, connecting government, training all ourselves so that consultations that usually take 6 months or 2 months take a shorter space of time, because we'll be dealing with a society that is digital literate, so that we're able to respond to challenges of today, which are very dynamic as compared to challenges of the past. Thank you, Chairperson. Back to you, Chair. Am I disconnected?
No, DM, Chair is still
Okay, thank you. It's back to you, Chair. It's back to the chair.
Chair.
I'm calling her now, Nadia.
Sorry, colleagues, I was on mute. Thank you very much for the responses. I think all the questions have been answered, but the responses have sparked some follow-ups from me. I don't know if there are any other follow-ups from the other members, but with regard to my follow-ups, it's a very controversial question, but I'd like to know what safeguards are in place to ensure that the FPB is not being used as a political tool to suppress criticism of government or controversial political views under the guise of harmful content. Then I'd also like to know, can the FPB provide evidence that it applies content regulation equally across political, religious, and cultural content? Or may I say this, are some voices disproportionately targeted for censorship? And with regards to balancing rights, how does the FPB balance its duty to protect against online harm with a constitutional imperative to promote a free, open, and democratic society where expression is a right and not a privilege? Those are the follow-ups from me, and I see Honorable Pinar's hand is up for a follow-up. Over to you, Honorable Pinar.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I'm well covered. The only thing I hope they did not deliberately skip over was disinformation. Now, you spoke about harmful information, but I want to get clarity on this because this is a very critical point in our democracy. How do you guys consider what is disinformation or misinformation? Because, like I said in my original question, what is disinformation yesterday can be the truth tomorrow. And we've seen that with a lot of issues coming up with COVID, with worldwide issues. So I want to get a clear answer. How do you determine, as the department, what is misinformation? And that is that also, as the Deputy Minister said, static, or is that movable at times? Thank you, Chairperson, for
Thank you. I do not see any other hands. If you could lower your hand, Honorable Pinar, I'll hand over to Mr. Tlaku to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And I'll also ask my colleagues to come in. So on the safeguards to ensure that the entity is not used for political issues. So there's that fairness that I talked about, and I think it's a common theme that we have to, and then with the enforcement committee also being there as well, to be able to deal with such issues, and in case then there's escalations to sort of to them, for them to be able to have that, and like we said, Honorable Chair, the enforcement committee being led by or being chaired by a retired judge. But also the appeals committee as well, which is an independent body, which can then adjudicate on matters if indeed, and we have found in ways where they have gone against or at least they've adjudicated against what the classification would have been. So for me, I think those are the guardrails that are there to ensuring that there's that balancing between, as you said, Honorable Chair, on the constitutional rights on freedom of expression, and again, the society that is free for all of us to express ourselves. I honestly wouldn't be correct when I saying we have all the answers. I think it's an evolving environment that we're all working towards, but there are principles and guidelines in line with the Constitution, in line with the Bill of Rights that all of us enjoy, freedom of expression, but also to reiterate that the balancing between where, like my colleague advocate was saying, that there are guidelines which then guides the society to saying, as a 7-year-old child, a grade 1 child in South Africa, what, especially when we're going out on classification guidelines, what exactly do we think could be consumable by a 7-year-old for us to come up with an age rating that says 7 or, you know, whatever age rating? So it's a consultative process, Honorable Chair, when we sort of come up with those regulations. But in terms of the safeguards, it's a continuous process where indeed the FPB puts themselves out there, and then it can then be challenged if there's that view either by the courts or by any other body that then sees that there's no consistency in those rulings, or there's no consistency in us sort of applying the Films and Publications Act to the latter, or there's a move away from what the Constitution says. So we then remain to be taken to task on all of those other issues. And then Honorable Pienaar, on the miss and this, indeed, there was a pushback on the miss and disinformation, sorry. But what I would like to say again is that it's if that whatever that is being said, and yes, I agree, what is true now, when facts come up, it may then become true, whereas at a specific time, it was not deemed to have been true. But what we are saying, and in line with what the Act says, if that whatever that is being portrayed on video or online, it's then causing harm. For example, if someone says, use this, and I'm using this just an example, Honorable Chair. If someone says, use this medicine for you to lose weight, and we're seeing that people are being harmed by this, and we're seeing that this is perpetually disinforming people, and it has a sort of an ending product end where it says people are then being harmed by this or misinformation, then that causes harm. That's where then it is then defined as causing harm. But I think without just limiting the prohibitions to mis and disinformation, the Act says if there's a content that causes harm and it can be determined that people are being harmed by this, either children or the society is being harmed, it can then be classified as sort of contravening the sort of the Act. But I must say that it's an ever-evolving society industry, which, like I think DM was saying, that we need to have an agile legislation, but these things take time for us to get them sorted. We are always playing catch up, but we need to be proactive. But again, having an sort of a society that can then allow for us to debate issues, to take each other to task if we are seeing that there are certain things that all of us are not then aligned with. I'm not sure if I covered everything, and Advocate Kosi, if you want to come in. But I thought, Chair and Honorable Pienaar, that's what I could get to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clarko. My questions have been answered, and I think Honorable Pienaar's as well. I do not know if the advocate would like to have any closing remarks before we excuse you and go to the second section of our meeting. Advocate? Okay. Maybe she's on mute like I was.
Okay. Apologies, Chair. I think the last one on my part is on the issue of censorship, whether FPB is a censorship board or not. What I want to put forward is that as a regulator, we are there to balance that right to freedom of expression. And we all know that there is no right that is absolute. So all the rights are subject to the limitation clause. and they can be limited in terms of the law of general application. And the Films and Publications Act, it is that act, but is not censoring, but is there to ensure that children are being protected, parents are properly advised. So if you are a creative that is making a movie that has horror, we're not saying don't have a horror movie, but we're going to put an age rating and put an advice for parents that this movie has horror on it, there's substance abuse, there is violence on it. That is not censorship, but we are providing advice to the consumers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Advocate and Mr. Clarko and the DG. We are now going to go over to our second item on the agenda. So you are more than welcome to be excused. And in the new term, I will definitely be submitting some written questions because, as I said, many issues have been sparked that I need questions to, but because we're limited for time, I cannot ask all the questions that I want answers to. So thank you very much, and you are excused. Colleagues,
Thank you, Chair.
Who was that? Okay, colleagues, the second item that we are to discuss is SAPU and the business rescue practitioners. And before I hand over, I just want to take you through with what has transpired since the invitation went out and yesterday. Now, on the 13th of November last year, when I was on bereavement leave, the business practitioners requested a deferment to the new year, to the first term, which was granted. And the meeting was to take place last week, but because neither the minister nor the DM were present, we decided to have it today so that at least the DM could be present. But yesterday, a letter was sent out by the business rescue practitioners stating that they would not be available and they would send a Mr. Stander, a Mr. Ravura to represent the BRP, and a Mr. Governor Gaiba and Jagbi who would represent SAPU. Now, I engaged the minister's office yesterday with regard to this request, and he emphatically stated that they had also requested him for further deferment, and he said that he would not grant that deferment. They then also requested that this meeting be held in camera, which was also not acceded to. Now, colleagues, before we can carry on, I would like to know your view as honourable members on whether we should carry on with these three people presenting to us, as I feel the business rescue practitioners are really shirking their responsibilities. They've had since 30 November, when they were meant to present, requested a deferment. They should have been ready by now. And I am personally completely dissatisfied with their approach to our request for this meeting today. They've had 4 months to present us with their report. So could I ask through a show of hands from the honourable members how you feel about that before I hand over to the Deputy Minister? Thank you. All right, Honourable Mabilu, Honourable Pienaar. Let's just see if there are any others. Mardia, do you see any other hands?
No, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honourable Mabilu, I see Van den Berg. All right, let's do it like this. Honourable Mabilu, Honourable Pienaar, Honorable van den Berg, Honorable Farmer. Thank you. Over to you, Honorable Mabilu. Honorable Mabilu, maybe you on mute. Could you just see Mardia? I don't see his name now.
I think he might have just gotten disconnected, Chair.
Okay, can we pass the baton over to Honorable Pinard?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I just want some clarity because I didn't quite get it regarding your statement of the letter you received. What is the reasoning on the part of the authority,
The BRPs.
That's the BRP. Thank you, Chair.
BPR,
What is their
sorry.
what is their reasoning for actually not attending? Because I mean, like you correctly said, they had 4 months. This is over Zoom. I cannot possibly think of a reasonable reason not to appear before this committee. And I think I must agree with you. It is quite shirking the responsibility to account to us. At the end of the day, Chairperson, we represent the public, and we need to make sure that we can hold them directly accountable. Now, they are being represented by someone else today, the 3 names you mentioned. But I want to know explicitly why are they not here, and what reasonings are they given? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Pinard. Before I hand over to Honorable Mabilu, Mardia, are you able to flight the letter, the apology letter we received from them? Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, there is the letter. There is no information regarding why they're asking for to be excused from the meeting. So that's the letter we received from the Chief Executive Officer. While it is being flighted, I think everybody has read it. Mardia, if you could also then flight the letter that the minister sent us. Thank you. And while she's flighting it, let me hand over to Honorable Mabilu.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Well, it is quite concerning that a contentious matter like the post office is not taken as serious as it is supposed to be by the business rescue team. I think we have been very lenient for quite some time for them to come and account to us, and we have bent backwards. For me, it is not acceptable. I feel for the representatives that they have sent. It is just not fair and proper for them to come and not present. But I think we should be consistent in our approach, that given the circumstances and given the fact that we have gone through the content of the letter, there's no compelling reason that indicates why they are unable to come. Therefore, Chair, I think we should subpoena them, that they must come in question in person so that we are able to question them directly, so that the representatives don't refer to them back and forth. So I'm suggesting that we don't take the report, but we've got an appreciation of the consistency of the DM. Maybe just to make some remarks, but they must appear, Chair, so that we deal with them directly. That's my humble proposal. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much for that, Honorable Mabilu. As I said, I had an engagement with the Minister's office yesterday, and I requested him through his office to provide me with a letter on his take regarding the approach that the BPR took. So it is there for you to read, and whilst you're reading, I can ask Honorable van den Berg to pose his view on this. Thank you, Honorable van den Berg.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have gone through the presentation that was offered to us, and I must honestly say that I'm not seeing any light at the end of that tunnel. They are asking for 2.5 billion rand additional funds. So you know that I have been very critical of the post office, and for that reason, I don't think we can engage with them because I don't think there will be much value in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Farmer, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, no, I don't believe we should deal with lawyers, shop stewards, or representatives. This is not how we do things. This is not how we keep someone or some entity or some body accountable. This is not how we do it. Clearly the minister is in agreement with us. So, Chairperson, unfortunately, I said no, we cannot continue doing things this way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Farmer. It is clear that we all share the same sentiment. Now, with regard to this and summoning this entity or the BPRs to the meeting, I asked Advocate Ali to be present today. She was on the platform, but unfortunately, she has been called away to a very important meeting and had to leave the platform. So if I could request, before we hand over to the DM, that I engage with Advocate Ali regarding the legal steps that we can take on the suggestion from Honourable Mabilu on summoning them to appear before the committee. If you would allow that, then we will engage with each other, and the information that she provides to me will be shared with the committee. And if we have to organize an urgent Zoom meeting just between us and Advocate Ali to see how we're going to attend to this matter, even if it is in our constituency leave, I hope you will be available to take the call, and we'll take it from there. Honourable Farmer, I see your hand is still up. Would you like to raise another question?
No, Chair, sorry, it's a legacy hand. I apologize.
Okay, fine. All right, and summing up, DM, the feeling of the committee is completely clear. We are not going to entertain second-hand people. Sorry, to the people that were seconded to come down. I'm not attacking you personally. I just feel it's unfair that you are subjected to stand in for the BPR. And we will therefore not entertain you today. I will engage with Advocate Ali on the way forward. Over to you, DM.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Maybe normally, in the absence of the minister, I hear to stand for the minister. But the minister has actually did send me a notice about his concern in this regard. But I took a view that if there is a presentation to be submitted there, we'll rather go and account. And now maybe that the DG is here and all other colleagues are here. But I stand here to respect the discretion of the committee to exercise its authority. I do see the letter which you have displayed, that at least it could have shown the reason why. My worry is that it does not even show the reason. In that regard, I respect the committee decision.
Thank you very much, DM. So the message is loud and clear. We are not going to carry on. And as Honourable van den Berg also stated, the presentation just there's no meat to it. And that is why we requested the BPR to appear in front of this committee. And at the last moment, because they didn't, this is my opinion, they didn't get their way with the minister with another deferment. They then at the last moment decided that they would present us with an apology. This is just not on, as the members have also stated that they account to us as a committee, and we will therefore not entertain them today. And I will take everything up with Advocate Ali and revert back to my committee members with the way forward. And on that note, I would like to thank you, DM, for making yourself available. You've always acceded to our request, which we appreciate, and to all the other members on the platform, not the members, the other presenters on the platform that came down. Sorry about this, but the committee has spoken. So if you wish, you can remain. We just have internal matters that we have to attend to. And DM, if you have any other closing remarks before I hand over to Mardia to flight the minutes for approval, the opportunity is now.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I don't think much. I'm not sure if DG would have wanted to say anything. DG?
Nothing, DM, thank you.
That's where we end. I thought they would have come here, even if whatever difficulties they have, they would have actually used this platform to articulate them here. Thank you, Chair. There's nothing much.
Okay, DM, as we stated, we cannot listen to the DG. With all due respect, the BPR members had to be present. They've been given the opportunity to draw up their report since last year. So sorry for the staff members on the platform. May you have a good day. You are now excused. Mardia, if you can flight the minutes for us. Thank you.
We'll do so. Just give me one moment, please.
Perfect. No rush, we're very early.
Yeah, no, what's going on? Just give me one moment. Chair, is my screen visible, Chair?
Yes, thank you. If you could just enlarge it a little bit, punch it out for us. Okay, colleagues, these are the minutes of the 26th of March. I take it that you have gone through it and read them. Just check your attendance or apologies, whatever it may be. Let's just see here. Okay, who were the apologies? Honorable Kennedy apologized. Thank you very much. If we could go down. Okay, you can go to page 1, page 2. Page 3, 5 or 5. All right, you can move faster because nobody's put up their hand. Thank you very much, Mardia. May I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes of the 26th of March? Honorable Pinar,
Chairperson, I move for the adoption of the minutes for the meeting.
thank you very much. Could I ask for a seconder? Oh,
Honorable Farmer,
Odysseus.
Chair, I will second.
thank you very much, Honorable Farmer. Mardia, no other minutes?
No, that was the last set of minutes, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Colleagues, I will then revert back to you as soon as I have had an engagement with Advocate Ali on the way forward. Thank you very much for availing yourself today, and may you have a good afternoon. And those debating this afternoon, or not debating, asking questions, good luck. Have a good day. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Recording stopped.